A controversial call by the officials has sent shockwaves through the league. The decision occurred late in a tightly contested game and altered its final outcome. Video review failed to correct the initial ruling and sparked immediate debate among coaches and analysts. Fans erupted on social platforms, demanding clarity and accountability. Teams directly affected by the call have formally requested an independent review by the league office. League officials acknowledged receipt of the complaints and promised a thorough investigation. The referee's report will be compared with broadcast footage and available technology. If procedural errors are identified, the league faces pressure to implement corrective measures. The integrity of competition depends on consistent and transparent officiating. Players and coaches expressed frustration while avoiding inflammatory comments pending the review. Legal and contractual implications may follow if the investigation reveals negligence or willful misconduct. The club whose result was overturned is preparing documentation to support its case. This incident highlights systemic challenges within officiating protocols and renewed calls for technological investment. The coming days will determine whether consequences are merely symbolic or substantively reformative. Officials must review the play with all available angles before responding to public and team concerns immediately professionally. Referees operate under immense pressure and require clear protocols, uniform training, and robust oversight mechanisms to ensure fairness. Players deserve consistent enforcement of rules to maintain trust and protect competitive integrity across every matchup without exception. League offices must evaluate whether additional replay tools or centralized review would reduce human error significantly and quickly. Coaches will adjust game planning when officiating uncertainty emerges, altering strategies and risk calculations on crucial downs regularly. Officials themselves often seek clarity from supervisors to avoid inconsistent rulings and minimize controversial outcomes through better communication. Transparency in the investigation process will determine whether penalties, retraining, or formal reprimands become appropriate remedies for officials. Media coverage intensifies scrutiny and forces rapid responses, sometimes complicating careful internal deliberations that require time and patience. Fan reactions, while emotional, can catalyze meaningful reform if channeled into constructive dialogue and formal petitions with evidence. Ultimately, safeguarding the sport demands accountability at every level, combined with commitment to objective truth and continuous improvement. Following the incident, team executives convened emergency meetings to gather facts and coordinate official communications to stakeholders immediately. Legal counsel reviewed contractual clauses related to game outcomes and potential remedies under collective bargaining agreements and precedents. Commissioner staff requested comprehensive reports from on-field officials, replay operators, and the relevant chain of command for review. Independent analysts began evaluating the call frame by frame to establish whether standards and rules were correctly applied. Prominent commentators debated policy changes publicly while emphasizing the need for calm, methodical examination before pronouncing judgments widely. Some former referees offered context about split-second decision-making and the limits of human perception under pressure today. The affected franchise prepared a dossier compiling timelines, video evidence, and witness statements to support its appeal formally. Players expressed mixed emotions privately, balancing competitive disappointment with faith in institutional processes for redress and fair outcomes. Sponsors conveyed concern about brand association and requested updates on the league's handling of the incident and timeline. Public trust hinges on transparent outcomes, clear explanations, and demonstrable steps to prevent recurrence immediately. If the investigation finds procedural misconduct, the league may impose fines, suspensions, or mandatory retraining for responsible officials. Penalties aim to deter negligence and reinforce a culture of precision and accountability throughout officiating ranks and standards. Reforms under consideration include improved training modules, standardized protocols, and expanded use of technological aids during reviews nationwide. Centralized replay centers staffed by experienced adjudicators could provide consistency and reduce on-field pressure for split-second calls significantly. Clearer communication protocols between referees, replay officials, and broadcasters would minimize confusion and contradictory public messaging in real time. Independent oversight panels composed of former officials and impartial experts could audit high-stakes decisions post-game to ensure fairness. Revising rulebooks with clearer language would reduce subjective interpretations that often produce contentious outcomes in marginal scenarios effectively. Enhanced referee evaluation metrics and transparent performance reviews could incentivize continuous professional development and accountability across all levels. Financial consequences for systemic failures might pressure leagues to prioritize investments in technology and training infrastructure over time. Ultimately, reforms must balance human judgment with technological support to preserve the game's flow and fairness for everyone. Historical precedents illustrate how leagues handled controversial calls, offering templates for both accountability and reform in previous seasons. Some past incidents resulted in policy overhauls that improved consistency and reduced similar controversies in subsequent years dramatically. Other episodes demonstrated the limits of punitive measures, showing the need for structural changes rather than isolated punishments. Academic studies on sports governance emphasize transparent procedures and independent arbitration to safeguard competitive integrity and public trust. Fans and stakeholders often recall past cases when demanding swift action, increasing pressure on league administrators and boards. Effective precedents include establishing neutral review processes and publishing findings to educate the public about rulings and reforms. Where games carried championship implications, leagues have sometimes issued statements clarifying rules without changing results or awarding compensation. Legal challenges rarely overturn game outcomes, but they can prompt settlements and reforms that prevent recurrence over time. The league's institutional memory should guide responses, ensuring lessons from prior errors inform future decisions and protocols consistently. Ultimately, balancing precedent with contemporary expectations will determine whether the response satisfies stakeholders and restores confidence over time. Controversial rulings can demoralize teams, affecting locker room morale and individual player focus across subsequent weeks and performance. Coaches face the dual task of protecting players mentally while maintaining competitive preparation and strategic clarity and discipline. Veteran leaders often provide stability, reminding teammates to control controllables and focus on execution rather than external controversies. Younger players may internalize frustration differently, necessitating tailored support from coaching staff and sports psychologists to navigate pressures. Teams appealing outcomes must prepare carefully, balancing public messaging with keeping the squad united and motivated on field performance. Players affected by the call may require acknowledgments or support to process disappointment and maintain trust in leadership. Consistent internal communication prevents rumors and helps players understand organizational responses and anticipated timelines for resolution and closure. Short-term performance dips can occur, but strong culture and leadership typically mitigate long-term declines in most professional teams. When teammates rally around adversity, cohesion can strengthen, producing resilient performances that defy external pressures and expectations. Ultimately, leadership responses shape whether the episode becomes a distraction or a catalyst for renewed focus and unity. Media narratives evolve rapidly, often emphasizing controversy before full facts emerge, requiring disciplined, official responses and measured statements. Public relations teams craft messages to inform fans, reassure partners, and protect organizational reputation during investigations and updates. Social media amplifies emotions, spreading partial clips and commentary that can distort context and inflame tensions quickly online. Leagues increasingly post explanatory materials and timelines to address misinformation and maintain credibility with diverse audiences publicly available. Journalists must balance speed with accuracy, resisting the temptation to prioritize sensationalism over comprehensive reporting for responsible coverage. Opinion pieces may shape perceptions, but empirical analysis and official findings ultimately determine long-term narratives and reforms, respectively. Broadcast partners coordinate with leagues to ensure consistent information flow and reduce contradictory on-air commentary across all platforms. Fan forums and podcasts provide commentary ecosystems where narratives can take root and influence broader public opinion rapidly. Measured silence from teams may be strategic to avoid escalation while investigations proceed and evidence is compiled carefully. Transparent, timely communication ultimately rebuilds trust more effectively than defensive statements or delayed acknowledgments during public crises. Consistent legal scholars examine whether procedural failures could trigger contractual disputes or potential liability. For the league or clubs, collective bargaining considerations may arise if officiating standards affect player safety, compensation, or competitive fairness systematically, and agreements. Litigation remains uncommon, but high-profile errors create incentives for legal action or negotiated settlements in some circumstances. Occasionally, policies, clarifying appeal windows, evidence submission standards, and independent review processes could strengthen procedural fairness and reduce litigation. Insurance and indemnity arrangements between leagues and clubs may be affected if systemic officiating failures lead to damages. Regulatory scrutiny could increase, prompting sports commissions or governmental bodies to evaluate oversight frameworks and transparency obligations elsewhere. Contract language often limits challenges to game results, but novel circumstances can test the boundaries of such clauses. Public policy discussions may consider whether standardizing technological aids across leagues protects consumers and preserves competitive integrity broadly. Independent audits could be mandated to review systemic officiating performance and recommend reforms free from internal biases externally. Policy shifts require stakeholder engagement, legal vetting, and careful design to avoid unintended consequences while enhancing fairness globally. Advanced replay systems, including multi-angle synchronization and enhanced tracking algorithms, promise greater accuracy and speed in critical rulings. Automated sensors and player tracking data can augment visual reviews by providing objective metrics on positioning and timing. Machine learning models trained on historical decisions could identify patterns of error and flag ambiguous plays for human review. Investment in technology must be accompanied by robust training to ensure officials interpret data correctly and integrate insights effectively. Costs and access disparities require leagues to consider equitable rollouts so smaller organizations are not left behind technologically. Transparency about algorithms, auditability, and human oversight prevents over-reliance and maintains trust in decision-making systems and legitimacy. Pilot programs allow iterative testing, stakeholder feedback, and refinement before full-scale deployment across leagues and competitions worldwide. Eventually, technological advancement must respect the game's flow, avoiding excessive stoppages that erode fan engagement and competitive rhythm significantly. Collaboration between leagues, technology providers, and independent experts produces standards that improve consistency and public confidence over time. Sustainable reform blends human judgment, technological augmentation, and transparent governance to uphold fairness for future generations and legacy. This shocking officiating mistake reveals vulnerabilities that demand measured investigation and decisive action from league leadership and accountability. Stakeholders expect transparent processes, credible findings, and reforms that demonstrably reduce the possibility of recurrence while restoring trust. Short-term remedies should include formal reviews, targeted retraining, and protocol clarifications to address immediate procedural weaknesses and timelines. Long-term reforms require systemic investments, transparent governance, and collaborative oversight across leagues, technology partners, and independent bodies globally. Players and coaches deserve clarity, while fans expect fairness. Both constituencies merit evidence-based explanations and responsive action promptly. Media and public discourse must remain constructive, focusing on solutions rather than sustained outrage that impedes reform productively. Technology offers significant promise, but governance, education, and cultural change determine whether tools improve or complicate officiating ultimately. An independent, transparent review will set precedents, clarify accountability, and provide a roadmap for credible systemic improvement ahead. Leadership choices now will shape public confidence and define whether this episode becomes a turning point or scandal. The game's integrity depends on accountable institutions. Meaningful consequences paired with transparent reforms will ultimately raise